hours. Every other parameters call, we have like, oh, here's like these 10 parameters. This is 1 hour on one parameter because it's more than a parameter. Spoiler alert, it's actually a equation. And it is one equation that we really need to think about. And I think Sam sees this, and it's a challenge. In fact, we're not even implementing the impact hours correctly into our test hatch, right, Sam? This next rehearsal? Yeah. So, because it's a little complicated, and we really need feedback on it. So to start this off, I want to allow everyone to answer this first question as an intro question. What percentage of tokens that are created in the TEC should go to impact hours, people? So, because this is the question that we're really answering with impact hours in this parameter. What percentage of the tokens that are created during the hatch should go to the people who put the money into the hatch? And what percentage should go to the people who put the elbow grease into the hatch? I'm not going to start it. I'm going to pass it. I'm going to pass it to Jake, and I'll go last.
Gracias. Percentage of the total. This is the percentage of the total, right? How many tokens are actually created?
Of the hatch tokens, yeah. So like if people send in $1 million, right? How much of that creates tokens for people with impact hours, and how much of that creates tokens for them?
Here, let me get my hat. Here, I got one here. There's one right in here. Hold on. I don't know. Can this, I don't even know if it should be a set percentage, but I'm going to say 15%.
Great. And you don't have to say a percentage. You can say a range.
What do you think?
But then when you're done, pass it on to someone.
I'm done. Go ahead, Sam.
I think that 15% is a good one. The thing that I see is that it has not. It must not be so much, because if not, it's not going to be fair with people who is donating. But also, it's important that the people who is putting impact hours, they receive at least 10 dice or something like that per hour. So I'm not sure yet. Santi?
I think it's a tricky question, because I don't think we can go with one fixed variable. It's got to be a variable. And I would say, considering that, I would say between 10 and 15. And it, to me, depends on the amount of money that we are able to raise during the hatching phase. It's too easy in a way to say, and too risky to say just 10%, 15%. It depends on a lot of parameters. So that's my point. I'll pass it to Livia.
Thanks, Santi. I think I'm a bit confused of why, like, the more percentage, the less it gets to contributors. Maybe I don't know if I can answer without like clarifying this.
Well, we're not really talking about like what's been proposed, just like in your head, you know, without thinking of what's already there. What percentage should people with impact hours get, and what percentage should people without that put money in get?
Yeah, I think something like 10 and 15% seems fair. And I pass to Tonga.
Yeah, I don't understand very well. I don't know.
I mean, just off the top of your head, it's really just like how much the people who put in work to make this happen, what percentage should they get, and the people who put in money to make this happen, what percentage should they get?
Yeah, I don't know. Is what do you mean? Every I still don't understand. I'm sorry. I missed the first explanation because my internet was connecting me and disconnecting me, so I didn't manage to understand.
That's okay. I mean, you don't have to answer. You can also just pass. You don't
Yeah,
have to put you on the spot.
maybe I'll pass and maybe I can tell in the future if I understand.
Okay, you want to take it, Sean?
Yeah, sure. So I was trying to wrap my head around this, and I might as well. I think I can just. I have it up right now. I'm just going to show you. So in order for me to get any sort of intuition around things, I usually have to like plot them. And Livy, I was stuck on the same thing. It's like, why are we? It's actually the more we raise, the lower the percentage of this payout we get. And that didn't quite make sense to me at first, but when you model it, it still looks good. I mean, because I don't know if you guys can see this, probably my font is too small. Actually, let's see if I can zoom in.
Yeah, I
But
wish it could be a little larger.
okay, is this better?
We can also zoom in on, yeah.
Okay, so let's just focus here. So this is the hatch rate. So this parameter here is just how many total hours we all contribute collectively. So that's what we can modulate, and then we can have this sort of match reality. So I don't know if anyone's done this now, or if anyone has a rough estimate at how many hours have been totally contributed so far, but let's just put it around 5,000 total. Because what that means is essentially the pie is getting divided more, because the cultural build in total is going to get divided across all these hours, and each person is going to have some number of hours, and they'll get paid out based on that number of hours. And so then the second thing we want to focus on is just this, the hatch raise, which is what we see here increasing. So it's up to 10 to the 8. So 100 million is the largest raise that we sort of project. And then we say, okay, well, a minimum raise would be 250,000 XDAI. So then we see that the more we raise, the higher the hourly rate we get paid out. So if we raise $250,000, then it's an hourly rate of $10, and that will equate to 20% of the total raise is going to go to the cultural build. And that basically we need that higher percentage distribution because we've raised less money, but we still want everyone to get paid out. But as we raise more money, we can actually decrease the size of the pie that's going towards the cultural build and still have an increasing hourly rate. If we could also plot this where if we held this fixed, like let's say we just fixed it at 20%, it would be interesting to see then how much the hourly rate increases. It would increase a lot more rapidly as we raise more funds. But as this is, we go from 10 XDAI an hour up to 200 XDAI an hour at the top raise, which would be $100 million, and that would be paying out 1% of the cultural build. So we get this sort of decaying increase, like from 100,000 or 250,000 to I guess this is 4 million. So we get this kind of sharp increase, maybe to more like to about 2 million. We get this very sharp increase in our hourly wage, and then it sort of flattens out. And that flattening out is the result of what we're doing, where we're saying the more we raise, the less percentage we require to give out to the cultural build. So just as I'm explaining this now, I'm thinking, oh, this would be interesting. I could replot this where this is actually held constant. Like we could say, okay, we just want exactly 10% going to the cultural build, and then we could see how the hourly rate increases. So, but I hope this clears some intuition. This is what we have essentially so far. This is the base, but I'm sure there's like lots of creative ways we could go with this as well.
Hey, for everybody
You
that's
really,
jumping
you
in,
really, yeah.
for everybody that's
Sorry,
jumping
go
in the
ahead, Jake.
channel right now, we're just going over, not asking too many specifics, but just what percentage of the tokens do you think out of the hatch should go to impact hours?
Yeah, so Sean, that was an amazing check-in, I have to say, above and beyond. But what is your personal opinion? Like, what would you expect to see, and what are you using for that?
So my personal opinion is, I think this is a pretty cool model. I think I like the way that we have this, and so we started with a few simple bounds, like between 20% and 1%, and to me that seems logical. And I think a realistic raise is sort of between the I don't know, 2 million to like 40 million range. And so when you think about that, that gives an hourly rate of between 60 and 190 XDAI per hour, which to me is extremely appealing. Like, that is a ton of money. So and it's not like we're draining the whole raise. It's exactly quantified. So in that, if we raise $2 million in this case, that would be 15% of the raise going to the cultural build, and everyone would be getting 60 XDAI per hour. So I think this is a really cool model. So I think between the 20 and 1% range makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. You want to give it a pass?
Yeah. I'm not sure who's all gone yet, but I'll pass over to Zeptimus.
Thank you, John. Wow, what you just showed is incredible. I was thinking also like something similar. I mean, not like what John showed us, but now I see it. It's like, for me, it looks so great. Like because you're rewarding people. Like the more we rise, you're still rewarding more the people, but at the same time, you also are rewarding the people who's putting money in, giving less percentage. So I think that's amazing, and I think it should be correlative on the. I don't think it should be like, as Santi said at the beginning, like 1%, because it also depends on how money we raise. So if we raise more money, it makes sense, like it's a less percentage for the contribution. And if we raise less money, it makes more sense, like the people who's putting time have more contribution. And I'll pass it to Tamara.
I have a question for after Tamara.
Okay. Yeah, really. Thanks for sharing this, Sean. It's excellent and a lot clearer for me to understand now. I guess I just want to say a few things. First, I'm going to just say them as they come to my mind. The first is I'm thinking about the idea of having a fixed, like a range versus a fixed percentage, and the advantages and disadvantages of both. And I'm leaning towards, at first the range sounded so reasonable, but now I'm sort of leaning towards some sort of fixed percentage, just to reward the people with impact hours as we raise more, specifically because those are the gamblers who took risks as well by donating our time and efforts. So I actually like the idea of having a fixed number and just saying, regardless of whether it's a small raise or a huge raise, the people who took the risk by donating their time get a correlated reward for that effort. And then the second thing is, if I understand, I'm not even sure I 100% understand this correctly, but so there will be some okay, so hatch is raised, some percentage goes to a funding pool for TE projects, some percentage goes to the hatchers, and then some percentage goes to impact hours. Is that the correct way for me to be thinking about how this happens?
It's more like hatch money comes in, a percentage goes to the funding pool, the rest, which is for TE projects, the rest goes to the reserve pool and mints tokens, and those tokens are split between impact hours people and people who put money in. That's probably the easiest way to think.
Okay, I see. So it's actually ongoing and continuous.
Actually, we are minting tokens. When we close the hatch, we are minting tokens for the value of that amount, for the impact hours people. It's another way to see that.
Okay, I understand it a little differently now then. Thank you. I want to think about it some more, so I'll pass to Tonga.
I want to ask if for example, the impact hours, I get tokens, but those tokens will be vested, right, for a year, or it is something different.
To keep it simple, let's just say yes. There's a small technical there, but let's say yes. And once they will be vested for however long we decide the vesting.
Yeah. Okay.
So Tonga, did you have an opinion, or did you want to pass it?
I think it is a lot of money in any case.
Okay, I'll pass it for you to Craig.
Hello. Joining late, but I have great connectivity because I'm not battling with 65 other people in my house. Whoop, whoop. Yay Python, yay data, yay plots. I love it all. As to actual thoughts on an appropriate percentage or range, nothing really. I mean, I want to digest it a little more, but I'm excited to see it visually.
And I can pass it for you. I think Marco. Marco might be the last.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna pass it to me. Hi, everybody. This is my first time on this call, so I'm not sure I'm really competent to comment anything of this because I'm like hearing and seeing this for the first time. So I'll just stand here behind and listen and try to absorb as much as possible for now. Thanks. And
Awesome.
Is there anybody else that needs to go?
No, I think that's everyone.
All right, cool.
I'm glad that we took the time to try to answer this question each as an individual, because really this is the question that we have to figure out. And it's not as easy as, it doesn't have to be as easy as most token projects. Most token projects, they say 10% goes to the team, 15% goes to the team. It doesn't matter what the token is worth, it doesn't matter anything, 15% goes. And what's really cool with our project is impact hours people are the team, right? This is the team. So it's super cool. We get to figure out what the team percentage is as a community. And the way that's being proposed right now is, well, let's go back. Let's go back in time a little bit and let's give a little bit of foundation. So how are impact hours created? It's kind of a messy process. It's commonly referred to as how the sausage is made. So what happens is praise happens. People dish praise. And there's actually, I think most of you are in the agenda, but Jake posted the agenda. Where'd you post the agenda link, Jake?
It's in Discord, right in TEC General right there.
TEC General, perfect. So definitely check out this. I'm just going to go through the agenda. So people get dish praise. Then every 2 weeks, there's a praise quantification. Praise quantification has evolved a little bit, and you can check out this forum post that's linked in the agenda to see exactly how it evolved and the steps that are taken. But basically what happens is a few people, it used to be just Livia and I. The last time it was me, Santi, and Zeptimus, and we're going to try to have a rotating community stewards panel for the next little bit. We give points to every praise, and then those points average out into impact hours. And then we go and do a sanity check and make sure, like some people, maybe they weren't praised enough. So we actually just go up and tweak their praises, how much they were praised, and some people were praised too much, so we might reduce it and make sure that we just do a little bit of sense making, that our subjective opinions aren't so far off. And then we go through and we look at who are the people that are actually compensated in another way. So there's the garden swarm people who get hourly wage of honey that was funded from honey. There's lots of people that the Common Stack has hired to do important tasks, and some people are full-time, like myself, and I get a salary from the Common Stack. Some people, we have like just an issue or something that we're like, hey, we really need you to finish this issue. So they get paid for that issue, but then they do other things above and beyond that issue. So we give them like 50% of the impact hours that they got. And then we count up all the impact hours and we dish them out to people. And then the praise quantifiers get, we're still working on that, and we're going to vote on the praise quantifiers pay. But basically, the people who are quantifying praise shouldn't quantify their own praise. But you can read the forum post if you want to go deep into that. And you can also look at the TEC praise sheet, and you can see how much every one of your praise turned into an impact hour. That is completely transparent and open, and you can go check it out. Then what will happen is these impact hours will end up with a die amount. And I like to talk about it in die because it's easy to understand. But what's really going to happen is that die is going to be then converted into TEC tokens. And that's what you'll end up getting. Nobody with impact hours will end up getting die. They will all end up getting TEC tokens. So that's the background. Are there any questions on that, like, before I keep going? Give it a second. Okay, cool. I'll keep going. So the principles for designing the cultural build tribute are that there's two main variables for determining how much an impact hour is worth. There's how many total impact hours are there, and how much did we raise during the hatch. And the design is such that if there's more impact hours, then each impact hour is worth less. If we raise more in the hatch, then the value of each impact hour should go up. But also, if we raise more in the hatch, then the people who are contributing money should have to donate less. So we want to make sure that the incentives are aligned for both the hatchers and the impact hour people to want to have a large hatch raise. And that's the goal of this. So in the end, when we're determining impact hours, the real question that we need to answer is, for every amount of hatch raise, what is the function of total impact hours for die per hour? So we need an equation that says if the hatch raise is this and the impact hours is this, then the die per hour is that. So there's a really great forum post. YGG already dove deep into it there. And then there's also a spreadsheet, if that's a little more easy for some people to understand, to see how it relates. And then the Python code as well. And I put these screenshots of the numbers here. So I want to pass it to Sem to give any other comments on this, and maybe I'm off on something.
Thank you. I have been playing with it a little bit. I can share my screen too. If you can see, here we have the original spreadsheet that Griff added, and I still think that this is the best one. We have this graph that we have seen with YCC. And I have been doing some other explorations in which we have a line or something that.
Sam, we only see you on the live stream, I think. Or am I getting that wrong?
Okay, wait a sec. Oh my god. 1 sec. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. As I was saying, I have been doing some explorations, and I still think that the Griff one is the best one. The problem that we have is that the independent variable should be the amount that we raise. The rest of the variables should be dependent on that one, and we don't have those yet. But it should look like this if we want to go with that approach. And I have been doing also other explorations to see how they will look like. So in a case in which, depending on the amount that we raise, we have a linear hourly impact rate. We have this with these numbers. We should begin with a very high building tribute, cultural build tribute, and our impact rate will be not so good. And we will end up with a very high impact tribute. And I mean, maybe that's the worst of the two worlds. And we also have this in which we begin with a certain amount that is the minimum that we want, and from there we raise it depending on the amount of funds that we have. But these were explorations that I was doing before the call, and I still think that this is the best one. I just wanted to discuss and see that there are other ways to do that, but with what we have been discussing right now, probably this is the best one. And we still need to get the amounts of how much money do we want to give if we get the maximum that we are requesting. Probably 200 is too much, because remember that it's in that exploration, it's 200 in case that we get $60 million, which we probably are not going to invest that much amount. So if we go for 1 million, for example, or something like that, our max ratio is going to be only 50 dice, and maybe we want to raise that. So the params that I think that we should be discussing is which will be this amount here, if we get the maximum, and also which is going to be the shape of this line. And for example, how much do we want to raise in case we want to get half of the expected maximum? Those are the two parameters that we are going to need to define this line here. Does it make sense? If you want, what? Or if you have any questions or.
So I think what I got out of this is that we have to. It's very important what numbers we put at the start and the end, right? Like, what is the top amount that we can even raise? What is the max amount we can raise, and what is the min amount that we can raise? That's even acceptable. And then we can't necessarily even determine the equation until we know those amounts. Is this true?
Actually, right? The two parameters that we can define is if we know the maximum and the minimum that we are requesting, that it's already a parameter that we are thinking of. For example, we are thinking on maximum in legal we have said maximum it should be $1 million, and minimum depends on how much proposals we have at the beginning. Maybe it's 100,000. So having those two numbers, we should give numbers of, for example, if we are raising 1 million, let's go for 100. And if we raise 100,000, we say 10. And those will be the two parameters that we will be dealing with. For that, we need the maximum and minimum goal, which we don't have yet.
And we need a total number of impact hours assumed as well, which we won't have.
Yeah.
So at least for context on total number of impact hours, we have about 2,000 impact hours so far. And last week we did 480 impact hours or something. So I'm imagining that we will probably, you can assume, somewhere around 600 impact hours for the next maybe even 700 impact hours total, because more people are working, so more impact hours are made as we go on. So I think we can expect it to be dependent also on our launch date and how much work needs to be put in before we launch. The sooner our launch date, the more value impact hours are worth, for sure. So the other thing that's interesting is the max goal. I don't think legal has totally settled on 1 million. I think that it can. I think that that was before when we were worried about it.
No, we decided, or we talked about that because we're thinking on the new legislation, but that's not going to affect us because it's not going to take place before we launch. So we can forget about that limit from the legal perspective.
Yeah. So that's good. And hopefully we are down to raise more than 1 million. In fact, having a high cap, a high max would be really nice. But we really, for the min, we need to figure out how much money do we need to fund projects to start to bootstrap this concept, right? We need to be able to have enough money to actually have an impact. So the Hatch tribute percent, that the min goal, the max goal, and the total number of impact hours, our launch date, effectively, all of these things are factors that come to this equation. That's why we're not going to come up with an equation for this in this call. But what I would challenge someone to do, and I don't know if it's YGG or if it's SEM, but is to create an equation with some variables that can be mapped to this graph. So let's say that as a person, I want to have the min. I'm saying the min goal is this, the max goal is this. I'm assuming we have about this many impact hours, and I want the min goal amount to be 20% for. I want the min. Really, it's die per hour. I want the minimum amount. If we only raise the minimum amount, people should only get $10 an hour. 10 die an hour. If we raise this number amount, then people should get 50 die an hour. If we raise this amount, they should get 100. If we raise this amount, they should get 200. And be able to just say those things and have some sort of magical line that just pops up that kind of fits that pattern the best it can, following this equation. Because what we need for SEM is that equation. We don't need the answer, but we cannot launch this hatch without that equation, because he's got to code the equation, and then we get to put the parameters in later. Or whoever says, here's the whole group of parameters, here's what the min goal is, max goal is, I thought out and I put in, here's what the kappa, the impact hours exponent. That's going to be a variable probably, and that will, and then this is the other, and they can use a little Excel spreadsheet to just come up with that equation. This is what we need. And so if anyone wants to take that task on, that would be huge. Huge. Anyway, I want to pass it. Does anyone have any thoughts?
I think looking at the left drawing, the left shape, which is the one that I assume that we're going to go for. If you have we're going to have to set, as you mentioned, the minimum and maximum cap. We need that. And we need to define those parameters. And we will have those. Right? To have the equation of, and I may be wrong, but I think that the only input that we need to create that equation is the maximum amount of die we want to give if we reach the max cap, and the amount of die we want to give if we reach the min cap. If we have those 2 points, we are set.
Yeah. And then it gets split by impact hours, so the number of impact hours is also a part of the equation. The one thing I want to say is we do not collectively decide on these things. There are too many moving parts. So the way that these parameters will be decided is that 5 to 20 people, whoever wants to, as an individual, we will have the set of parameters that need to be decided for the hatch, and we'll have the set of parameters that need to be decided for the upgrade to the bonding curve and conviction rate. Because we're doing it in 2 parts, now we have 2 sets of parameters. And one person will have to think about how each parameter interacts with each other and figure out what they think is important to make the perfect set, right? We have 20 designers, 5 to 20 designers of this economy, and then we as a community vote on which one is the best. Because we can't vote on these things have to be designed holistically. As you can see, we need the min, we need the max, we need the total number of impact hours, or at least a guess. We need to know the hatch tribute. We need to know how much money we want to fund for. There's just so many things. There's so many pieces all connected to each other that our goal is to make it really easy for people, geniuses, those mad scientists that are working for Ocean Protocol and block science, and they're getting paid millions of dollars to do like really important work. They want to be part of our community. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a foundation so those guys can take a Saturday and have it really easy to understand what they need to decide, and then craft almost like a strategy for our economy. And then we get to decide which one is the best. So, that's just a really important context. I know I can't communicate it very well. I don't think that it's getting across, but that's okay. I'm trying. We'll get there. It'll be easier when we have the full spec for the hatch and you can see the 2 specifications that need to be made. And then we can, and then it'll be really easy because it'll be like, oh, that's what I have to fill out. Any questions on this? If there's no other questions, I feel like we had a good session, so we can always end.
Sean, do you think we could create that equation through a logistic regression model?
Yeah, that's awesome, Santi. I think you're right. So because we're basically given this data, so we can do a function approximator, and I think linear regression or like a so linear regression.
A logistic
Oh,
one.
logistic.
Probably.
Yeah, logistic. Yeah. So we could map a function to this data. I mean, I think we could also program it sort of piecewise. So without putting together any sort of smooth function, we could just say if for each of these different, so we have 20 thresholds. For each threshold, we could say if raise is this amount, then this is the percentage. So I mean, that's a little bit less elegant. It would be cool to have one smooth function that really explains this graph, but it could be implemented piecewise as well.
I will go for the one that is not piecewise, because
yeah, it can't. I think it's less error prone. It's just a bunch of if statements, right? I mean, it's more code, but it's more clear, and I think it's less. It's more fault proof.
It's actually less code. You can't do log functions with no floating point. And Solidity sucks. Long story short. So piecewise is a really good point. What do you think, Sam?
We cannot use logarithms, but in Solidity, well, we can use logarithms, but it's better not to use them. There are some limitations, but I think that instead of doing it piecewise, we can just approximate a function that works fine for this, and I think that it will be easier to explain also for people. That okay, that's the function that we are using, and it's not a 20 piecewise function. I don't know. I would prefer to go with a function that it's continuous instead of continuous in a sense that it's just one function. We'll see.
So, yeah, but do you think that function will actually be able to be done in Solidity?
I think so.
Yeah, we can probably do a summation of.
Yeah, we can play with
quadratics.
numeric functions to simulate the exponential or logarithm functions if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to give a ride on that. I have been doing the other ones, and then I figured out, oh, those are not the ones that I was modeling. And yeah, I want to give a try on that. And if you, Santi and YCC, also want to find one that it's suitable, please tell me. That
can you share that? Really... Can you share that that spreadsheet so I can play around with it?
Yes.
Sem, do you know about using sine wave in Solidity? Is that doable? Like the sine function? Is it accessible in Solidity?
The sine. No, it's not.
I've never seen any trig in Solidity. It's not even close.
Interesting.
Dude, the stuff that Sem has done, you got to remember, there's no decimals. You know, like things get harder when there's no decimals.
But we can divide, and with divisions we can do a lot of stuff. We can approximate a lot of stuff. We can approximate sine. We can approximate logarithms. It's not going to be the exact thing, but it's going to be something that it looks like that.
Olivia, I saw you on mute for a second. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was thinking that an important input from the community is what is their minimum? Like, how much would people feel valued for their work being the minimum? I have a feeling that 10 is very low, that maybe we could have this, like maybe even a round of this in this call of like, how much do you think it's a fair minimum?
That's a great idea to finishing out the call. What is the minimum number of die per hour for impact hours that you would find acceptable? It's a great way to finish. Olivia, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think at least 15.
You know the game, you have to pass it.
Sorry, I passed to Zaptimus.
Thanks, Libby. I think it depends on the like the success of the project. If it's very success, like sometimes you can work and this work can work sometimes you work and this work it's a failure, so it's not, you earn nothing about that, and it should be okay as well. For me, it depends on the success of the project. But for me, 10 die is good. I think it's fair. And I'll pass it to Marco.
Thanks a lot. I wanted to say 30. But then if we'll look at it from the perspective of starting a project or from scratch and having a skin in the game, like I would even say 0, right? But yeah, that being said, it's just the way how we're going to look at it, right?
And then you can pass it.
So either 0 or 30. Yeah. And I pass it on to Sam.
Actually, if we set up a minimum goal that is high enough to get 50 dice per impact hour, then it's or 0 because we don't reach that goal and it's 0. Or if we reach that goal, we assure that everyone is getting at least 30. So playing around with the minimum goal is also the card that we have to set up that amount. I think that 15 is okay, or even 20. I am going to pass it to Tamara.
This is a really great question. My gut feeling is that we don't have a minimum, that there is a chance that this is like we choose a fair percentage and a percentage range, one or the other, and then it's sort of a chance that it can be very successful, but also a chance that it's not as successful as we might have hoped it would be, and that's part of the risk. I will pass it to Jake.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think there's either because we have no idea what's going to happen. We don't have any idea how much we're going to raise. The only thing I kind of was thinking here, and I was just brainstorming, but we didn't raise a lot, and we had a certain amount, that we're now going to try and dish out. Like Livia said, you still have a lot of people that put in a lot, and now that's not really being recognized because we weren't able to raise enough. Is there a possibility, like if we'd have to vote on this, I'd imagine, but then we could move that to like a separate pool where it just sits in case there's another one that we don't raise enough on and we can like tap from and then like dish that out to actually reward people for their impact hours because they actually weren't recognized, but as a group, we're recognizing it, moving on. We'll just kind of vote that this hatch didn't raise what we thought, and it's really not worth divvying up to everybody because maybe we won't even come up with $10 an hour, And then of course I don't know if we're still doing the tier thing for what people's contributions are. Like you said, Griff, you're on salary, so you're going to get even less than that, and then everybody else in between. Maybe we could vote like a dandelion instance, and we have a whole separate fund that for impact hours on hatches we don't raise enough, and that all goes into there. And then we could build those up either through numerous hatches or as we see fit. And then we, pull out of that, basically like a corporate fund. And then that way we can actually keep track of people who did really contribute during that hatch and didn't get rewarded for it. And then we have something as a whole to be like, we know you did really good, so here you go. Anyways, thought. I'm going to pass it to Santi.
I'm with Marco here. I think if I look at myself, I'm okay thinking that if we fail, I get nothing in terms of money out of this. Okay, I get a bunch of learning and a great experience, but it's okay. I can live with not getting any single dollar if we fail. What I would like is that if we succeed, and to me, succeeding is at least reaching minimum cap, we have at least, I would say, between 15 and 20. I'm there, whatever, it's fine for me. Just some amount that's fair. What wouldn't be fair to me is that we succeed as a project and we're getting a very low amount of impact hours of the hyper impact hour. Okay. That being said, whatever. I'll pass it to let's see, Fabi.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I 100% agree with Santi and Marco. I was thinking the first time just in a number, but it totally makes sense that if the project fails, I feel fine growing in my professional career, let's say. Taking all the things that I learned on the way, and that's it. But if the project succeeds, I think that 15 it's for me, from my point of view, it's a good number. I would pass it to Gigi.
Thanks, Fabi. Yeah, I think this is a really good question, Livy, and I don't think I haven't heard this considered before, of a minimum amount per hour. I think it's a really good parameter to consider in the model and the equation. And Jake, I think that's interesting too. I'm thinking about long-term horizons. As this model gets reused by all sorts of different communities and different maybe specializations in the commons, it's like a statistics game, right? If we do this 100 times for 100 different projects, there's likely some percentage of them that would fall short or have some sort of failure. So I think that's an interesting component to consider for the long term, kind of like a fallback situation where some amount of funds are raised, but maybe not enough to meet the project's needs. So they're in a pool and they're accessible by a kind of dandelion application. I think it's a good idea to consider. And I'm going to also echo the number that's been said the most. It's what came to me as well. I think 15 would be it would be very satisfying, like given how many hours people are putting in. And it's interesting, some people said 0, and that's actually a good point to consider as well. But yeah, for me 15 comes to mind. That's what I resonate with. And I'll pass it over to Dan.
Dan, are you there? Here, I'll take it. And Dan, you can interrupt if you get your. I think it's a really interesting discussion. The designers, when they're putting the parameters all together, right, which are all of you all get a chance to be the designer and create the parameters for the DAO. I think they'll have to consider this gamble, right? Like, it's there is a point of all or nothing. If we don't meet the minimum cap, the minimum goal, then we all get nothing. Like, that's how it's going to be. So maybe that means we can try again, but honestly, I would say it is kind of an all or nothing thing. So like it's really hard to have a failed launch and then launch again. Look at Yams, right? Remember how huge Yams was? They're still going. No one cares. Okay, so like we have to remember we may only have one shot at it. So maybe the designers will have, when you're picking the parameters, you have to say, how much do I want to gamble? You know, is it not worth starting this project if we don't raise at least $1 million? And then, but if we do raise $1 million, everyone 40 DAI an hour, you know, and we have this huge funds? Or is it more like, you know, we can have a small hatch and have a high exit tribute on our way in so that we can raise more funds for the funding pool later, you know, because there is this, like, the funding pool has two sources of funding. hatch tribute at the beginning and the exit and entry tributes during the thing. So if we raise very small amount, then we may want to have higher entry and exit tribute so we can still have impact. But then that reduces speculation. So there's just a lot of things to consider. Personally, I think that we should be a little cautious and we should set the min goal kind of low and be okay with 10 DAI an hour, especially because those 10 DAI end up turning into TEC tokens and and those TEC tokens on paper, they'll be vested, but they'll be worth much more than 10 DAI per hour. So the TEC tokens amplify the on paper money. You know, you're putting 10 DAI into the reserve and you get the TEC tokens that are backed by 10 DAI, but they're actually on paper. So that's my thoughts on it. And I like 10 DAI an hour because the double digits is like 40 to 9, you know? Anyway, I'll pass it to Craig. Finish this off.
Yeah, thanks. A couple thoughts. I think I generally fall in the boat with Santi and Marco in that personally, I'm fine getting nothing. It's not why I'm here. I'm here for all the other things people have talked about. At the same time, though, you know, I'm just one perspective and one, you know, sort of profile, I guess, within a very large group of people that may, you know, have other needs. So yeah, 10, 15, 20 is something down on the lower end makes sense to me from a personal perspective, but also that was a good point you just made, Griff, about, you know, what actually does 10 DAI mean in terms of TEC tokens and how that actually has a much more larger potential in the future with the vesting. I guess maybe one thing that I'm thinking about right now is for people that would like to cash out prior to vesting, that need to cash out to earn some money, you know, that's not going to be an option for them, or is it? Is there like a tech loop?
Yes. Okay. Really quick. I said, oh, it's kind of like that earlier, but before in the launching in 2 parts, the people will get impact hours. They'll get TEC tokens, and they should be able to. I mean, we could stop it if we wanted to, but I'm pretty sure that we will let them cash out for money. But it'll be less. So if it's 10 DAI an hour, it'll be 10 time minus the hatch tribute. So like if we have a hatch tribute of 30%, then they would be able to cash out for 7 DAI if it's 10 DAI an hour. So because the 10 DAI that people put in, some would go to the hatch tribute and they would cash out before. Okay.
Cool. Thanks.
So I think we're calling it to the hour, and we're having we have to jump to the legal working group meeting here.
Hey, before everybody goes, we're gonna have another session this Sunday on writing forum posts. We were gonna go into conviction voting, but I would really appreciate, given that we're doing this, that we have a few about exactly what we've talked about today, especially with the minimum and maximum. And why doesn't somebody throw this up about a minimum for, you know, what we could receive and everything else? But yeah, that'll be Sunday. I'll throw something in the general TEC about it, but I'd appreciate if you come.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming too for this.